It's Friday, July 31st. Let's talk PlayStation. So if you remember, we talked about this a while ago. PS4 model CUH1200 has now come to the US and Europe. It came to Japan like late June, like late last month. So it is finally coming over. If you don't remember, this is a slightly redesigned PS4 in terms of the internals and the exterior. So it uses less power. It weighs less. Apparently, it does make less noise when it's actually operating. Some people that actually have the system now are reporting that it is more silent. In terms of the exterior design, we all know that glossy panel on the PS4 that is actually a matte finish now on this new model. Instead of the touch-sensitive buttons on the PS4 for eject and power, that has actually switched to mechanical buttons that you actually have to physically press, which, definitely makes sense there. I mean, the one thing that, for me at least, it's cool that the system becomes more reliable and more practical, but I at least am always the kind of person where I'm like, I like the sort of cheesy features like that. I like glossy products, even though I know people don't like that because they it tracks fingerprints and whatnot. But I like glossy products. I think they look cool. I like the touch sensitive buttons. I think that's a very premium sort of feature, even if it does get annoying when you accidentally press it or something. But because people that do have this new model are saying that the actual buttons on the system are very sort of cheap feeling and stuff, but that is kind of getting really picky. But my favorite console design ever is the original fat PlayStation 3, that big glossy black monster with the touch sensitive buttons. I think that thing was just when you bought that thing back in 2006, it even though it was obviously $600 and a very expensive piece of hardware, it felt very, very premium. So I don't know, that's the only thing that bothers me. I won't be getting a PS4 model CUH 1200. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, now that my dumb useless rant is over, let's talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is that the game's director Testuya Nomura discussed that they're going to be doing some changes to the game when it actually does end up coming out. One thing being that they're going to be taking the combat to a slightly different direction and instead of the traditional turn-based combat, they're likely going to be doing something a little bit more different, kind of modernizing the game in a sense. But you probably won't be seeing the traditional Final Fantasy VII combat system. They will be changing it up a little bit. Tetsuya went on to say that it wouldn't be drastically different, he wouldn't make it into a shooter or anything, which I think is pretty clear that he's not going to make it a shooter, but it is going to change in some way, shape, or form, which a lot of people are actually very happy about. They're actually cool with that. I'm the kind of person that's I love turn-based RPGs and things like that, so I would have preferred it to not change, but you know what? This story is enlightening to me because so many people are okay with this, which is shocking. You're taking a beloved game from how many years ago, and you're being very open about the fact that you're changing it and you're doing a lot of different things with it this time around, and people are actually okay with that. That's kind of fucking mind-blowing, nowadays, when you think about it, but that's actually pretty refreshing, so I'm okay with that in a sense. Alright, so this next news story is actually pretty relevant to the fact that our Ryan on Gaming topic this past week was about PlayStation Plus and the value of games and things like that. But basically this past week, a UK PS4 user was checking out the What's New section, and there was a prematurely opened video of a new feature that Sony's going to be offering to people, which is that you can now vote on what games you're going to get for free the following month during PlayStation Plus. So for the example, they showed off 3 games that you could vote for, and basically you could even see the standing of where the game currently is and how many days were left for the vote, and basically whatever game wins ends up being the free game for the following month of PlayStation Plus, which I think is a really cool idea. Yeah, I mean, this is something I would have not expected to ever come as a feature or as something that Sony would likely do, but I mean, that's cool. At least you get options there, and of course it's not restricted in that sense. You're only picking one free game, and we all know that we get 2 free games per PlayStation system and things like that. So this is one of those surprisingly nice things that kind of came out of left field. I didn't see this coming whatsoever. But if you want to look at this in sort of a cynical sense, now that people know one of 3 games that they're possibly getting, they can bitch about all 3 games instead of just one of them. So great. So now let's talk about some Sony Financials. We do this every few months when Sony actually releases their Sony Financials, and of course, how many other episodes we've done this, good news pretty much all around, well, definitely for the PlayStation division. So these past 3 months ending June 30th for their financials, Sony sold 3 million PlayStation 4s. That's up from 2.7 million in that last time frame last year, and now they're up to 25.3 million PlayStation 4s worldwide. So yeah, they're selling a lot of these things still. Now, if you want to compare that to the rate of PlayStation 2, PlayStation 4 hasn't even been on the market for 2 years yet. It took PlayStation 2 two years and 8 months to hit 20 million systems. PlayStation 4 is not even 2 years old, and it has hit 25 million units. So as we've always talked about on the show, PS4 is still selling at a faster rate than PlayStation 2, and we all know PlayStation 2 is the highest sold console ever. So PS4 is still on track, basically, to be a very, very successful piece of hardware. Now, I'm still of the mind where I'm like, PS4 is probably not going to hit 150 million systems worldwide, which is what the PS2 is at. Because at a certain point, I feel like PS4 is not going to be able to keep up with PS2's rate of sales. But it's still good, positive news all around. Sony also detailed a few other things about their other divisions. Sony's making a lot of great money in image sensors. You know, Sony sells their imaging sensors and things like that for smartphones. They, you know, you don't even know this, but you know, if you have an iPhone, you got a Sony camera in there. Basically, Sony provides the image sensors for those things. Their smartphone division is still not doing that well, and it's funny because the smartphone division is basically taking away all the profit that the PlayStation division is doing, but the PlayStation division is earning Sony more and more money. Sony is still pretty keen on staying in the smartphone business though. They said they're going to refocus that division a little bit. They're going to try and create more profitable devices. I would assume that means probably some lower cost phones. It seems like really the high-end phones are like that market's completely dominated by either Apple, Samsung, HTC. You know, Sony just can't find a good place in the smartphone market. I mean, most of their money is coming from their technology being in other people's smartphones rather than them selling their own damn smartphones. There was also in the financial report that Sony has their insurance section is doing pretty well. Sony has a lot of different businesses, some not even related to technology, movies, and games. They have an insurance division too, and that's earning a few extra billion yen for them as well. Certainly not as high of a margin as like the PlayStation division or their movies, Sony Pictures and things like that, but they do have that one little division that's kind of offsetting losses from other parts of the company. But either way, like it's finally good to see this though. I mean, how many years ago we were talking about Sony was on basically a 10-year decline. They were constantly losing money. All of their divisions were doing terrible, and they finally turned it around a little bit. Now, if you want to talk about the Xbox side of things a little bit, Phil Spencer commented this past week about how they're doing in Europe and kind of acknowledged the fact that they're not doing that well in Europe because, we talked about this how many weeks ago, which is that Sony has a pretty much commanding lead in Europe, like 90% in certain territories of Europe where it's just nothing but PlayStation users. And Phil Spencer went on to say, what I like about Phil Spencer is how humble he is and how completely understanding he is of like the position that Microsoft is in, and always acknowledges how well other corporations are doing, whether it's Sony or Nintendo. He commented saying that Sony has a rich history in that market. They've been there much longer than us. They have a deep understanding with customers and everything, and kind of have that brand recognition there. In terms of Microsoft, they want to focus a little bit more down there. They got Gamescom coming up, so Microsoft's going to be holding a Gamescom press conference, showing off Scalebound, Crackdown. What's the name of the other game? Quantum Break. They're going to have Quantum Break there. That looks really cool. We all know Sony's not going to be at Gamescom this year. They're actually going to be at Paris Games Week instead because they opted to not have a Gamescom press conference and E3 press conference so close together. So this will be a good opportunity for Microsoft to finally do a little bit of catch up and maybe catch the eyes of the European market just a little bit, because Microsoft's sitting at like a little over 13 million systems right now for Xbox One. So Sony's close to a 2-to-1 lead basically worldwide with PlayStation 4, and honestly I don't see that changing anytime soon. But yeah, I mean the sales rate is just incredible. I cannot believe PlayStation 4 is doing this well. But I will say this, it'll be interesting to see what Nintendo does, because they just recently hit 10 million systems with Wii U. The sad passing of Satoru Iwata. I want to see what this company is going to be like gearing up for. We all know that they're working on the NX, the next actual Nintendo hardware for their home console. 3DS sales, I mean they're doing okay there, but I really want to see what Nintendo's got gearing up to. It's getting on the precipice of things, right? PS4's got 2016 games coming out. Microsoft's really hungry, and they're doing everything they can to win back the gamer. And Nintendo's gearing up for all sorts of exciting new things that we don't really know anything about just yet. just a really good, exciting time, I feel. Anyway, those are just some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. Like I mentioned earlier, this week's Ryan on Gaming topic was PlayStation Plus. Are the games worth it? Do the games suck? Is PS Plus worth it? All that usual stuff that people usually complain about in terms of PlayStation Plus. Go check out that conversation about PlayStation Plus. Part 2 of Jak 2 is up. Part 3 will be coming up Monday. No real changes there. Jak 2 every Monday so far. If you're enjoying it, keep watching them. It's still Jak, actually. It's surprising, right? Doesn't change. It's still Jak and Daxter. We're still in Haven City. We're still playing that game, and we're you know what? We're having a pretty good time. And that's about it for this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. So I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I'll see you guys all next Friday.